And joining us now from Oxford to discuss the current situation in Libya is Hugh Miles, an author and journalist specialising in Libya and the son of the former British ambassador to that country. Hugh Miles, welcome to Late Line.
Thank you.
Before the first military action, President Obama said that this operation would be a matter of days, not weeks. 3 days in, how realistic is that time frame looking?
Well, I don't think it's looking very realistic. There's no sign at all of Gaddafi's forces losing their morale, and all the signs are that this could turn out to be quite a protracted conflict.
Well, indeed, if the implicit aim of the West is regime change, I mean, even if that is achieved, is that really an end game, or could even that just be the beginning?
Well, I mean, one of the problems is that there's a discrepancy between what the UN resolution says, which is that the West is supposed to be protecting civilians, and what the West actually intends, which is regime change. And that's just one of the problems that the West is facing at the moment. The outlook is really very uncertain. There's no clear exit strategy. And even if the Gaddafi regime was to fall, the fact is there's no government in waiting in Libya. There's no obvious successor to Gaddafi. And so a period of chaos after he falls is quite likely.
Well, indeed, you've worked in the country. Is it clear who the West is supporting, who these rebels are?
Well, no, they're not. I mean, the West is a very ragbag militia, if you like. It's not clear exactly who they are. It's not clear who their leadership are. They don't have any clear military structure. And so really the West has come in on one side in a complicated country with no history of freedoms, no clear transparency. And we're backing one side in what could turn out to be a protracted civil war.
And you say one side. Indeed, if it turned out to be a civil war, would it necessarily be one side? I guess, how do the various tribal loyalties fit into the rebels as we understand them today?
Well, the rebels are more or less a pretty unknown factor. We're just learning who the rebels are. But essentially, the Gaddafi regime does have support from not just, obviously, the Gaddafi family, elements of the army, the Gaddafi tribe, and other tribes in Libya. The rebels come from the east of the country, which has got a different tribal makeup, and so their power base is different. But there does seem to be two clear sides at the moment, but the makeup of these sides is unknown. Even Gaddafi's army, Gaddafi's forces are really very unclear.
You say that if Gaddafi goes, that you would see a period of chaos. What if he doesn't go? Is it a very realistic proposition that you get a Gaddafi West and you get a rebel East?
Well, that's possible. I mean, it's not inconceivable that Libya could split into a kind of like North and South Korea or East and West Germany. But that's one possible scenario. Another scenario is that the rebels prevail and that they manage to overthrow Gaddafi. But there doesn't seem to be much sign of that at the moment. Gaddafi still seems to command the loyalty of a lot of his forces. And although there is this no-fly zone in place, the fact is so far this has not been an aerial war. And the rebels, by the looks of it, do not have the military capability to turf Gaddafi out of his power base in Tripoli, or vice versa. So there seems to be a kind of stalemate at the moment, and that could continue for a very long time.
Tell us a little about your understanding of the support that Gaddafi does have. We talk a lot about paid mercenaries. Does he have loyalty simply because those who are with him can't afford not to give him loyalty?
Well, Libya is an extremely opaque country, and finding out any information about Libya is always difficult. It's probably one of the most opaque countries in the world. But clearly, Gaddafi does have a power base. Clearly, there are people who support him. Of course, he's got enormous oil wealth with which to buy support. He also commands support from his own tribe, although it's a relatively minor tribe in Libyan terms. But now many members of the regime know that they will be facing, frankly, probably certain death in the event that the rebels prevail, because the rebels are likely to show Gaddafi and his regime no mercy. So they clearly have their backs against the wall. But now that the West has intervened, this plays into a long-standing narrative of Gaddafi's, of colonialism, of crusades, of Western interventionism, which is going to appeal to more Libyans. It's very hard to tell how many people will be swayed by this argument, but certainly more people will be drawn to Gaddafi's side simply by the fact the West has now intervened in this way.
And then I guess that the question becomes how long that intervention lasts for, how long the West or the Allied forces stay in there, and how far they're prepared to go.
Well, that's right. I mean, the problem is that this is, as I say, it's not an air war, and so just by using air power, the West is not likely to be able to dislodge Gaddafi. Now, I mean, what we are hoping for, I mean, the best outcome, I think, would be if there was a surprise military intervention, a political coup inside Gaddafi's ranks, and if a member of his family or one of his close guards suddenly turned against him, defected, or even assassinated him. But frankly, this looks like wishful thinking. There's no sign of this happening at this stage. And don't forget that Gaddafi has been in power for 42 years, and you don't learn a thing or two about staying in power for that time unless you have an iron grip on the country. So what seems more likely is that there's going to be a kind of stalemate, and then the West is going to be faced with a very difficult choice of whether to escalate and to continue with the unstated aim of their mission, which is to overthrow the Gaddafi regime, or just to let him continue to remain in power, which is going to throw up more problems. Are we going to then do business with Libya? Are we going to buy their oil? If we do, are we going to give them money? Who are we going to give the money to? If we don't buy their oil, this could lead to real economic problems. If we don't trade with them, then this could lead to a humanitarian crisis, which there isn't actually at the moment in Libya. So this military intervention could easily spiral and lead to problems that we don't yet have.
Even though there may not be a clear strategic objective beyond, as you say, regime change, do those who have led this, I mean, your country, Britain, for example, and certainly France, the US seems less inclined to be seen to be taking the lead, but can they afford anything less than regime change? Now they've taken those initial steps, can they walk away?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult to see how they can, but at the same time, it's not possible to simply, well, it is conceivable they could try and assassinate Colonel Gaddafi, and Liam Fox, the British Defence Minister, has mentioned this possibility, but Winston Churchill balked at the idea of targeting Hitler for moral reasons. So, you know, it's not legal, or it won't be acceptable to many in the Arab and Muslim world if we begin to try and target Gaddafi. And I mean, this is another factor that as long as this war goes on, what is the response going to be in the wider region? How are they going to view this conflict? Because there will be inevitably civilian casualties, and the whole purpose of the UN resolution was to prevent civilian casualties. The moral argument that we were intervening in Libya doesn't stand up in the Arab and Muslim world, because at the same time there is uprisings in Yemen and Bahrain where many people are getting killed, and we're not intervening there. So frankly, Arabs and Muslims are already very suspicious of this kind of intervention, and the longer this goes on, the more difficult these problems are going to get, and that there are no easy answers, and there is no clear exit strategy for the West in the event that Gaddafi holds on, which seems likely.
Well, let me just ask you that question quickly. Can you see any circumstances under which Gaddafi would give up?
Well, I think that if there is an internal coup is the most likely thing, as I say, and it's possible that members of his family will defect already. Some of his cousins have reportedly defected. But this drip of defection that was going on before, which seemed likely to lead to the most cordial result, this seems to have dried up. And now Gaddafi seems to be holding on to power very tightly, and he has a loyal power base, and they know, as I say, their back is against the wall, and they know that they're in this together, and that if they lose, they are all likely to, frankly, be swinging from the nearest lamppost.
Well, let's look at the other side. You talked about the Arab countries, and of course we've already seen the Arab League. They did qualify their earlier comments, but there is certainly concern there already. And we also saw today that the US, Robert Gates, has said that they expect to turn over primary responsibility within days. But my question would be, responsibility will be turned over to who? Because it does seem that even NATO is divided. Germany, of course, didn't vote for the UN Security Council resolution. It abstained. Who do you think will take the running on this?
Well, I mean, although there was a UN resolution passed, it was passed in a rather lukewarm way, as you say. And although there is the support of Qatar and the UAE, these countries are political dwarves and military midgets. No offence to real midgets. They are not very significant. Syria and Algeria both opposed the resolution, and they are far more influential countries in the Arab world. I mean, it would be wonderful for the West if Egypt was to take an anti-Gaddafi stance, but Egypt, obviously, and Tunisia, Libya's two neighbours, are also facing a very uncertain political future, so we can't depend on them to take a position.
All of that said, and given that you've worked in the country, you've spent some time in Libya, you have some understanding, could the UN have stood by? Did they have a choice?
Of course they had a choice. Yes, they certainly did. This was not inevitable. This was intervention of choice. I mean, after all, we have not chosen to intervene in Bahrain or in Yemen. The West pushed hard for this war, David Cameron and Sarkozy, because, well, I mean, we can speculate as to their real reasons, but there's really, very rarely are there pure altruistic motives in foreign affairs. So I think the West could have, and they could have chosen another route. For example, it might have been wiser to have supplied the rebels with anti-tank weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, to have let them to fight the war on their own without this Western military intervention, which has a distinct danger of entrapping us, and in very much the same way that we were entrapped in Iraq, where we went into a country where we thought that the dictator was very unpopular, we would be welcomed with flowers, and it didn't turn out quite like that.
Hugh Miles, you paint a disturbing picture of what may lie ahead. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.